Los Angeles is facing an economic crisis unlike anything we've seen in decades. While the world watches headlines about immigration raids, the real story is what's happening to the backbone of California's economy. And it's not what you think. Los Angeles officials said they are considering all legal options following this week's controversial immigration raid dubbed Operation Trojan Horse. Experts are fearful for the future of the state's economy if immigration enforcements continue to saw apart its workforce. We're talking about an operation that could fundamentally reshape not just Los Angeles, but the entire American economy. So what exactly happened in Operation Trojan Horse? And why are economists sounding the alarm bells?
Protests in Los Angeles last night after an immigration raid being dubbed Operation Trojan Horse.
Bro, they got raided right now.
It unfolded just before 7 a.m. ICE agents pulling up to a Home Depot, waiting in the back of a rented Penske moving truck before opening the doors, jumping out, and detaining vendors and day laborers.
You have a warrant for this arrest?
The Department of Homeland Security saying it arrested 16 undocumented immigrants from Mexico and Central America. But critics claim the raid was illegal because of a decision last week by an appeals court which upheld a temporary restraining order against indiscriminate immigration stops and arrests in 7 California counties.
Whatever terms of that temporary restraining order.
The footage that emerged from Wednesday morning was shocking. Federal agents in tactical gear, concealed in the back of a rental moving truck, suddenly jumping out to detain day laborers at a Home Depot parking lot in Westlake. 16 people were arrested, workers from Mexico and Central America who had shown up that morning looking for honest work. The operation sparked immediate protests and raised serious questions about whether federal agents had violated court orders. To understand the magnitude of what we're witnessing, we need to look at the numbers that politici don't want you to see. About 37.9% of jobs in 2023 were held by immigrants. Immigrants are defined as foreign-born residents, including those who became U.S. citizens, are authorized to work in the U.S., or are undocumented residents. That's right, nearly 4 out of every 10 jobs in Los Angeles are held by immigrants. This isn't some abstract statistic. This is the foundation of the city's economic engine. But Operation Trojan Horse represents something much more calculated and controversial than traditional immigration enforcement. More than a dozen undocumented immigrants were arrested near a Home Depot in Westlake on Wednesday, federal officials said, in what was dubbed Operation Trojan Horse. The operation came days after a federal appeals court upheld a temporary restraining order against indiscriminate federal immigration stops and arrests in 7 Southern California counties, including Los Angeles. The timing here is crucial. Federal agents conducted this raid just days after courts explicitly told them they couldn't conduct these types of operations.
Garb loading into a rental truck. They were headed to a Home Depot where they jumped out of the back of the box truck and arrested 16 day workers waiting to be picked up for jobs. It's all part of what CBP is calling Operation Trojan Horse. And it comes as the Wall Street Journal has new reporting on immigrants vanishing once inside ICE detention. Quote, frequent transfers between detention centers across the country or to multiple locations in a few days have become commonplace in the second Trump administration, according to more than a dozen immigration lawyers across the country. Joining us now, NBC's Julia Ainsley. Paul Butler is former U.S. attorney and MSNBC legal analyst. Tim Miller's back with us. Julia, tell us more. What do you know about this so-called Operation Trojan Horse?
The legal context makes this even more troubling. Last month, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to stop arresting suspected undocumented immigrants based solely on their race, ethnicity, language, and the type of work they do, otherwise known as racial profiling. That meant the Trump administration had to stop randomly showing up at work sites and arresting people with no criminal history. Former U.S. Attorney Paul Butler explained that the federal restraining order specifically prohibits DHS and ICE from stopping people based solely on race, language, or location. Being present at agricultural sites, bus stops, or similar locations doesn't create reasonable suspicion for detention, suggesting these Home Depot arrests may violate this court order. But then something changed on Wednesday morning in Los Angeles. They came in unmarked vans and trucks, And then a rental Penske van, moving truck, a box truck said, witness Tony Carfello, an organizer with the Los Angeles Tenants Union. They pulled in over by that Starbucks over there and up into this front part off of Wilshire Boulevard, and they grabbed whoever they could. The use of a Penske rental truck wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic. Gregory Bovino, commander of operations for the U.S. Border Patrol in California, retweeted the clip, adding the title Operation Trojan Horse, a reference to the large wooden horse used in Greek mythology to take the city of Troy by surprise. This wasn't random enforcement.
Trojan Horse, that operation, we had pre-intelligence. We knew what was going on in that location, as we do in nearly every location that we come into contact with here in Los Angeles. We knew there was criminal activity afoot there for a long time. So we're not going to ignore criminal activity, we're going after it. And that's exactly what we did. It was a very creative and innovative concept that our Border Patrol agents came up with. That's that same creativity and innovation that we see along the border and in the interior every day that brings good, sound operations to make our city safer.
Federal officials later revealed they had pre-intelligence about the location and claimed the operation was a creative and innovative concept. They stated that 30 to 40% of those apprehended in these operations have significant criminal histories, with at least 6 out of 16 arrested at the Home Depot having criminal backgrounds. But critics argue these claims don't justify the broad sweep that caught many workers with no criminal records whatsoever. The economic implications are already being felt across Los Angeles. Los Angeles' large, productive, and now very afraid community of undocumented immigrants has slipped into the shadows. It hurts us all. You're taking away part of our workforce. That is hurting LA more broadly. That's in part because of the close integration of illegal immigrants into the broader economy, and not just in Los Angeles. To understand why this matters so much, we need to look at which industries are being hit hardest. The recent ICE raids in Los Angeles area Home Depot store parking lots sparked protests and national headlines, but also call into question a day laborer market that has been critical to the U.S. economy. Hispanic Construction Council research estimates a nationwide construction workforce shortage of 500,000 workers. It says fears in the community will delay construction projects across the country that are already behind schedule. The construction industry is ground zero for this crisis. In California, undocumented workers make up about a quarter of all farm laborers and construction workers. But it's not just construction. These workers are integrated throughout the economy in ways that most people don't realize. Thus, real and persistent gaps in the American workforce have opened up, especially in agriculture, hospitality, and meatpacking. Foreign-born workers, a group considerably more likely than natives to lack education beyond high school, step in to fill those jobs that would otherwise remain vacant. The Home Depot parking lot raids specifically target what economists call the day labor market. Home improvement store parking lots were once teeming with aspiring laborers looking for a day's work. Contractors needing temporary help would swing by and scoop up a few workers for the day, and a symbiotic ecosystem thrived. This isn't some underground economy. This is a crucial part of how construction, landscaping, and home improvement projects get completed across America. Day laborers are not the workers on massive construction projects, more likely to be picked up by subcontractors who need help painting or reframing closets. But if the smaller subcontractor can't get those jobs done, it has a ripple effect throughout the construction industry. The ripple effects are already starting to show. Construction projects were 14% behind schedule when Trump took office, but that has now risen to 22% as deportations and immigration enforcement have thinned out the construction labor market. We are getting farther behind on projects, and we are seeing across the country, wherever there is a crackdown, people are not showing up for work. But the economic damage goes far beyond construction. The fear created by operations like Trojan Horse is causing workers across all industries to disappear from the workforce. California industries like agriculture, technology, and hospitality, which rely heavily on immigrant labor, may face labor shortages. Errors in an expanded E-Verify system could further disrupt employment for documented workers in these sectors. California's economy, heavily supported by immigrants, could see declines in productivity and growth if labor shortages increase or immigrants fear participation in the workforce. To understand just how devastating this could be, we need to look at what happened when other states tried similar crackdowns. When Arizona adopted anti-immigrant laws in the early 2000s, many undocumented residents, perhaps as many as 40%, left. The economy suffered, and unemployment for low-skilled white men increased, not decreased. That last part is crucial. The promise that removing immigrant workers will create jobs for American citizens has been tested, and it failed. Instead, entire industries contracted, businesses closed, and the overall economy suffered. The numbers on the potential economic damage are staggering. One study concluded that if the government succeeds in deporting every person currently in the country illegally, it would result in a 1.4% drop in gross domestic product in the first year, with losses rising thereafter. The economy would shed more than $5 trillion. $5 trillion. To put that in perspective, that's roughly equivalent to the entire GDP of Japan, the world's third largest economy. But the immediate effects in Los Angeles are already visible. Whether here legally or illegally, these are working men and women. When they get paid, they spend that money on clothes and places to live, toys for their children, food, and the stuff of life. This spending creates what economists call a multiplier effect. When immigrant workers earn money, they spend it in local businesses, creating demand for goods and services that supports additional jobs for both immigrant and native-born workers. In 2022 alone, immigrant households paid $579.1 billion in total taxes, nearly 1 in every 6 tax dollars collected by federal, state, and local governments. The legal challenges to Operation Trojan Horse are mounting. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass said the city is considering all legal options following the raid, which she claimed looks like the exact same thing that we were seeing before the temporary restraining order was issued. More than a dozen cities across Southern California have joined a legal effort against the Trump administration over its immigration raids. More than a dozen cities across Southern California have joined a legal effort against the Trump administration, claiming the recent immigration raids are targeting people based on race and ethnicity. The ACLU is also investigating potential violations of the court order. Mohammed Tajsar, a senior staff attorney at ACLU Foundation of Southern California, which represents plaintiffs in the lawsuit, said they are investigating the incident at the Home Depot and other raids reported in the region since Saturday. In a statement, he said the evidence available so far raises serious concerns that the federal government may be in violation of the order. But while the legal battles play out, the economic damage continues to accumulate. The fear created by operations like Trojan Horse extends far beyond those actually arrested. Proposals that expand deportation efforts and enforcement could create fear in immigrant communities, discouraging individuals from seeking health care, enrolling in schools, or reporting crimes. This avoidance can lead to untreated health issues, undereducation, and unreported crimes, which harm both immigrant families and public safety as a whole. This creates what economists call chilling effects, where the fear of enforcement causes people to withdraw from economic and social participation even when they're legally entitled to it. The broader context makes this even more concerning. As the U.S. grapples with labor shortages, reforming our legal immigration system is imperative to meet the demands of today's economy. As of March, the U.S. had approximately 7.6 million job openings, but only 7.1 million unemployed people looking for work. This underscores a significant gap between the number of jobs available and the number of workers ready to fill them. The United States is facing a fundamental demographic challenge. The shortage is not just a post-pandemic issue, it's a long-term demographic challenge. The U.S. birth rate is declining, and more Americans are aging out of the workforce than entering it. The drop in U.S. birth rate that started around 1960 and continued for more than 20 years fueled a shortage of low-wage workers that was offset by immigrants, mostly from Mexico in the 1980s and 90s. In this context, operations like Trojan Horse aren't just targeting individual workers, they're attacking the solution to America's labor shortage crisis. The shrinking workforce as a proportion of the population will pose significant problems for the U.S. economy if these concerns are not addressed promptly to ensure existing labor shortages do not continue to grow and that future shortages are addressed preemptively. The reality is that the productive segments of the population, namely the workforce, contribute most significantly to the economy through their labor, consumption, and contribution to public services through taxation. The timing couldn't be worse. According to Moody's Analytics, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act will result in 872,000 additional jobs by the fourth quarter of 2025. Notably, over half of these new positions, 461,000, will be in the construction industry. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is creating hundreds of thousands of construction jobs just as immigration enforcement is driving construction workers into hiding.
Treating them, John, almost as if they're livestock. And I mean, if anybody's old enough to remember Jim Crow and my grandparents were sharecroppers in this country. They didn't want to pay them. And now they're using this particular population to do the same. And I believe that this is inhumane treatment say 1 week they have to leave the country, and now because farmers need the labor, or they have to come back. These persons have been doing this type of work for a very, very long time on these farms, harvesting tobacco and other commodities around the country with no problem. These weren't criminals and all the things that the president says they are. These are hardworking people that are doing the work that many of us in our own country don't want to do, John.
Yeah, actually, let me play a little bit about what the president said about that. Listen.
People live in the inner city are not doing that work. They're just not doing that work. And they've tried, we've tried, everybody tried. They don't do it. These people do it naturally. I said, what happens if they get it to a farmer the other day? What happens if they get a bad back? He said, they don't get a bad back, sir, because if they get a bad back, they die.
The impact on American farmers has been equally devastating. Farm bankruptcies are soaring, crop prices have plummeted, and the agricultural sector is facing what one farmer leader called a state of emergency. The combination of tariffs and immigration raids has created a perfect storm. Farmers can't sell their crops overseas due to trade wars, and they can't harvest what they grow because their workforce is being detained or driven into hiding. The treatment of migrant workers has become so harsh that it's being compared to the Jim Crow era, with workers being treated almost as if they're livestock rather than human beings essential to America's food supply. The irony is stark. The government is simultaneously creating massive demand for construction workers while terrorizing the very workforce needed to fill those jobs. Policies targeting climate change in the Inflation Reduction Act, such as tax credits for wind and solar power, investments in electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and grants to reduce pollution in disadvantaged communities, will create 537,000 jobs annually over the next decade. Even beyond the immediate economic impacts, Operation Trojan Horse represents a fundamental misunderstanding of how modern economies work. Instead, a greater supply of less skilled immigrants is linked to a decrease in offshoring and an expansion of firms on U.S. soil, resulting in net benefits for U.S.-born workers across the board. The unique way in which immigrants frequently slot into the workforce, gravitating toward more manual or repetitive tasks, also means an influx of less skilled immigrants has only a moderate impact, if any, on the wages of less educated U.S.-born workers, particularly over the long term. The research consistently shows that immigrant workers don't displace American workers, they complement them. Although long a controversial issue among academics and policymakers, there is widespread evidence that the presence of more immigrants with relatively low levels of education does not substantially displace native-born workers. What we're witnessing in Los Angeles isn't just an immigration crackdown, it's an economic experiment with potentially catastrophic consequences. The fear created by operations like Trojan Horse is causing entire sectors of the economy to contract. With ICE immigration crackdown across U.S., the day laborer market in the construction industry and common in Home Depot parking lots has gone into hiding. The question now is whether policymakers will recognize the economic damage being caused before it becomes irreversible. We cannot operate a 2025 economy with a 1990 immigration system. There's a rare opportunity to bring common sense reforms to the legal immigration system. We can depoliticize the issue by focusing on workforce realities and economic growth. Los Angeles is at a crossroads. California is home to one of the largest immigrant populations, with 10.4 million total immigrants statewide. Nearly half of the children in California have at least one immigrant parent, and more than 34% of working-age adults are foreign-born. The city's economic future depends on whether it can protect the workforce that has made it one of America's most productive metropolitan areas. The legal challenges will continue, the protests will continue, but the economic clock is ticking. Every day that Operation Trojan Horse and similar raids continue, Los Angeles loses more of the workers who build its buildings, serve its food, care for its children, and power its economy. Immigrants create more benefits than costs while putting the country in a more globally competitive position. Lifting barriers to immigration would improve Americans' ability to find affordable housing, medical care, and groceries, and create the workforce needed both in the near term and in the long run. The stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just about immigration policy, it's about the future of American economic competitiveness. And right now, that future is being decided in the parking lots of Home Depot stores across Los Angeles. The question is, will economic reality prevail over political theater before it's too late? Thanks for watching. If you want to understand how immigration enforcement is affecting other major American cities, check out our other videos. And if you want to stay updated on how policy decisions are reshaping the American economy, be sure to subscribe for more in-depth analyses and breaking news coverage.